The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, happy opening day eve. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Guys, good morning. How are all of we doing? I'm noticing a lot more Reds apparel, like the color red, the Reds logos. I mean, it's almost as if opening day is almost here.
Got to mix it in.
Yeah.
Got to mix it in, start getting in the spirit. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's opening day.
I might be a negative Reds fan, but it doesn't mean I don't like baseball. And whenever we get to opening day, it's my favorite time of the year. So absolutely excited for tomorrow. I did see that there was rain in the forecast. I'm hoping that doesn't come into play because that would suck. I don't know how many days or how many times the opening day has been rained out. I know maybe at least once in my life. But tomorrow would stink. I'm hoping tomorrow's good because I think Friday's bad, so you couldn't push it to Friday. So hopefully we're all good for tomorrow for opening day. But I'm excited. This is why we're a fan of a baseball team that's not been very good over the last 20 years. It's just the baseball, the crack of the bat, the sounds of GABP. We love it, despite how the team performs, and I'm ready to roll. Last night was
usually the most optimistic day of the entire year.
Yes,
0-0.
0-0.
It's the peak.
0-0 and leading the division.
That's right. Cubs 0-2.
That's right. I'm ready to roll. I'm absolutely ready. Harry's calling me a gloomy Gus. Yeah, I mean, look. You can be a fan of the Reds the way you want to be a fan. I'm going to be the fan of the way I'm going to be. I'm going to choose to be the fan. So we're all good. We all have different attitudes and perspectives about this team.
Well, yesterday was just a one-day trial of the positivity. By the way, yes, you have to be you. I'm not even mad at if you're not positive about it. There's something that was announced yesterday during the Reds radio broadcast of the game last night, or of the exhibition game last night, whatever you want to call it.
Heard it.
That also adds to more gloominess when it comes to this team. So we'll get to that coming up. But another key injury to a position group, to a player in a position group that was already light to begin with when healthy. So we'll get to that coming up around the corner. There's also a player on the IL that was a DH last night that I'm just very fascinated by that whole ordeal and how that's working out. So we'll get to that. Reds opening day tomorrow. We got plenty of Reds to get into. Xavier, obviously they, get their new head coach in Richard Pitino. I think that's a hell of a hire. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a little bit as well. So we got plenty more to dive into coming up around the corner. Plus, Major League Baseball, ESPN's Jeff Passan weighed in on the state of today's game. And, well, what could potentially be looming is a lockout if the topic of a salary cap is going to be pressed in the negotiations in the CBA moving forward. So we have a clip that we'll share with you and get your reaction to that coming up in a bit. But Casey, before we get to Elliot's headlines, Casey, good morning. How are we over there in Hamilton, Ohio?
Good morning. Good morning. I am decked out in all my Bengals gear.
It's the start of Casey's favorite season.
It's the start of my favorite season. But I'm gonna wear all of my Red stuff tomorrow. I'm ready to be excited about this team, and I'm just not there yet. The end of football is coming for me.
The end of football?
Draft.
Yeah,
Come
the draft.
on.
You can't exhale till after the draft.
Well, as soon as the draft is over, then that's the end of the season.
That's correct.
So then I can really start dialing into the baseball. No, I'm just kidding. I'll be all in on baseball here. I don't know why I wore this. I just thought, hey, I haven't worn this in a while.
That's a great jacket.
It is fantastic. I remember wearing this for the Super Bowl. I was there for that Super Bowl party at Paul Brown, and I think they were selling these maybe. I don't know when I got this, but I thought I'd wear it because I hadn't worn it in a long time and didn't even think of the optics of it, that the Reds play tomorrow.
Championship spirit in this city. That's the closest we've gotten, and you're just trying to rub some of those vibes on the Cincinnati Redlegs.
That's right. Just be positive. Just be positive, Casey. We got some positivity in the chat. Kinner, Chase Wellman, member for 10 months. I'm ready to get hurt again. Let's go Reds. So kind of echoing those sentiments. We're ready. We're ready to roll.
We certainly are.
That's the spirit. I love it. By the way, not a Bengals fan, as you guys know, but I have to admit that that year they went to the Super Bowl, the apparel, the Bengals
good.
Super Bear apparel was like actually cool as hell. I'm like, there's so many things I've looked at, and I'm like, man, I wish I was a Bengals fan just like where that's one of those, Casey, the jacket you have right there. I'm a big fan of that. But I have to admit, yes, the Bengals Super Bowl apparel when it came out during that stretch was good stuff.
One of my biggest worries, because for a franchise like ours that doesn't get to many, that's a big piece of it. Is I need to load up on all the merch. So we got lucky. We had a good run. It would have been obviously better if we would have won the game, but
a lot better.
I think we all still wear the merch pretty proudly.
Oh yeah.
There you go. All right, let's kick it off. We'll send it to Elliot as we get things rolling with Elliot's headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines. Whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
Not a ton. Again, not a ton. We'll start with college basketball. If you care about these events, then this is for you. But I certainly don't. The NIT quarterfinals. North Texas, they beat Oklahoma State 61-59. Chattanooga, they won a tight one over Bradley 67-65. So a couple good games in the NIT quarterfinals. In the CBI semifinals, Florida Gulf Coast, they lost to Cleveland State. Shout out the Horizon, 72-65. And Illinois State, they beat the Incarnate Word, 78-73. I always love seeing the Incarnate Word.
It is, yeah.
Also, Kinner mentioned it, Richard Pitino. He is now the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers. He was linked to Villanova for, I would say, a long time. Chris Mack, the heavy favorite for Xavier, and Chris Mack obviously released a post last night that we'll get into later. But Richard Pitino, now the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers. Heading over to the NBA, the Cavaliers, they beat the Trailblazers on the road, 122-111. The Thunder, they take care of the Kings, 121-105. The Heat, they destroyed the Warriors, 112-86. Jimmy Butler only scored 11 in his return to Miami. The Mavericks, they lost to the Knicks, 128-113. I'm shocked. The Pistons, they beat the Spurs 122-96 with their next win, by the way. With the next win for the Pistons, they would become the first NBA franchise ever to triple their previous win total.
Wow.
So how about that for the Detroit Pistons? It's about to triple their win total from last season, the first ever. Heading over to the NHL, Ovechkin now 6 away from breaking the all-time goal record in hockey there. And then heading over to the NFL, Stephon Diggs, he agrees to a 3-year, $69 million deal with the Patriots. Russell Wilson and the Giants, they come to an agreement on a 1-year, $21 million deal. All these quarterbacks not going to Cleveland, which makes me think, again, as to yesterday's question, it's going to be a rookie quarterback in Cleveland this season. The last domino to fall, it feels like, is Aaron Rodgers. Where's he going to go? So Russell Wilson to the Giants. Those are your headlines.
We did have one other headline, relatively big news in the city of Cincinnati. It was reported yesterday by, I believe it was Jordan Schultz, the same guy that reported the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase contracts being finalized, that a Trey Hendrickson trade is off the table, is the way it is trending. The Bengals are not finding a partner for a trade for Trey Hendrickson, and now they're focused on reaching an agreement. We've seen that kind of bubbling up over the last couple days, weeks, but it's nice to finally hear that all but confirmed a trade, unless something obviously drastically changes and someone ups their offer through the roof. It seems like a trade for Trey Hendrickson is off the table, and like we said yesterday, he seems to be playing for the Bengals next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, Schultz, when did he become, and this isn't a shot at Schultz, but like he's been in on a lot. I mean, he was
really everything. He's been lapping Rappaport and Adam Schefter all through free agency.
Is this one of those, like, for instance, there's beef between LeBron and Stephen A. Smith. There's beef between Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee. It's not a coincidence that LeBron James decided to do a very rare on-site interview, not a Zoom interview or a phone interview. He went on-site in Indianapolis to the Pat McAfee show, and many believe that First Take, who has tried to get him on their program for years, and he has always declined, a shot at Stephen A. to go do that. Do you think that a lot the Cincinnati Bengals and agents tied in because they don't like Adam Schefter and some of the negativity on how they cover the team, is this being fed to Schultz as a way to stick it to some of the other media members that they don't care for?
Maybe, or Schultz is just giving him Starbucks gift cards.
That
I
could
don't
be it,
know.
too.
One way or the other, he's finding a way to get these scoops. That's a new Twitter notification I had to turn on this cycle.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't been following him as one of the top insiders, but certainly has proved that he is during this cycle, especially with the Bengals.
He's been just for the Bengals.
The
The Bengals
only
number
one that has anything
Yeah.
on the Bengals, at least anything that's been confirmed. So yeah, that's certainly been the place to be for Bengals fans all offseason. Is the Jordan Schultz Twitter feed.
He knows somebody. I don't know who he's knowing, but he knows somebody.
Well, good stuff. All right, and we'll keep an eye on that development as well. Again, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, that T and Jamar thing. I mean, we talked about all three for the longest time, but Gesicki got taken care of, Jamar and T got taken care of, and then there's Trey Hendrickson, who technically, as Elliot said yesterday, we're acting like he hasn't been taken care of. He has been taken care of. This is the contract that he agreed to 2 years ago. Technically, he got, T was looking for his contract. Jamar was looking for his contract extension. Gesicki was looking for Hendrickson. Not so much. You just don't like the original contract. Actually, the second contract that you signed with the team when it's all said and done. But, all right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I did just get a note. Paul Frerier is going to hop on with us coming up here in a little bit to talk about Xavier's new head coach and what changed in the developments of what everyone thought was going to be Chris Mack as the next Musketeer head coach. Now it's a Pitino, and it's a Pitino family affair in the Big East. So we'll get to that with him coming up here in just a little bit as well. But let's talk a little Reds on the other side. Last night they played a game in Dayton. I thought that my take was kind of little smart ass like a little bit. Like I thought it was, by the way, I think it was cool. I mean, it was sold out. There's a ton of fans there in Dayton last night at Air Ballpark. I was shocked at how much the starters played, at how much the big names played last night, to be honest with you. I'm glad nobody got hurt. But I'm not going to take it back. I think it was not worth the risk. I think throwing those guys out there after a long spring training with opening day just 2 days away, now a day away, I thought it was kind of silly to throw them out there on the field last night like that, but it all worked out. No big deal. There is an injury update, though. A key piece could be out for how long. We'll keep an eye out for an update. We'll get to all of that and more when we come back. More Off the Bench next. The celebration game was last night, 25 years of Dayton Dragons baseball. So a cool promotion that they did was to honor the 25 years of the Dragons. They had the current Reds against future Reds, against the prospects, if you will. Cool idea. I love the idea, like I said, because of how banged up this roster is with a lot of their main players heading in to opening day on Thursday. I just thought that you wrap up spring training. I wasn't a big fan of the idea of throwing out the guys, on the field one more time and playing in a meaningless exhibition game. Yes, for the fans, but the fans are locked in. The Dragons sell out every game anyways. It's not as if they had no fans and weren't going to have any fans. And now because they did this, now they have a ton of fans. But it's a cool promotion still. I know I'm Mr. Negativity. I think I'm trumping Elliot with my negativity right here when it's all said and done. I'm just glad nobody got hurt. So if everyone wants to rip me for that opinion, that's fine. But had somebody got hurt, then everyone would be agreeing with me as far as that goes. I'm glad that's not the case. I still think that's a cool event that they did last night. Either way, I was not a fan of the risk, but, I mean, it was sold out. I know that Trace and Nick Kirby were there, but they gave full media availability to everybody. We'll have a clip for you about Austin Hayes coming up here in a moment. But overall, I'm glad nobody got hurt last night, and some key contributors, in their final exhibition game or whatever, spring training game, if you will, had some big nights. Matt McLain, obviously, Will Benson, and some guys had some big nights at the plate. That's all you ask for.
Will Benson for the Dragons, not for the Reds.
Correct.
Dragons
The
side.
Correct.
Yeah.
Did hit a home run out of the ballpark, Karen. I don't know if you saw the clip. I saw
500 feet.
there was one video of it I saw, and it cleared the streets. So good for him. I think that might have been a little bit of an FU to the Reds.
I can't believe they made him play for the minor league team. Just don't make him play.
Yeah, I'm shocked at that too. I think that might have been a little bit in poor taste, but hey, it might get him on the roster. Who knows? Based on what's happening with this injury situation.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like, I don't know if you guys remember the Nick Senzel home run in Arizona. Nick Senzel came back up, and there was questions as to whether or not, he was good enough to be on the team. He came into Arizona, hit a home run, flipped the bat, looked at the dugout, and it looked like he cursed out everybody. It kind of felt like that. But good for him. Jake Fraley, again, you mentioned Jake Fraley, a home run for the Reds side of things yesterday. So if you have any doubts about Jake Fraley, like myself, that maybe put a little bit of an ease into your heart there, because maybe he still got it. Maybe the spring just doesn't matter at all. Who knows? Outside of that, yeah, I mean, it was a long game. I'm shocked that they let him play for nearly 3 hours yesterday. I'm pretty shocked at that. But I guess it was just for the fans. It was a fun event for the fans. Good for everybody that went. I'm glad it was fun. And we're on to the season. We're on to the start of the season. All I asked for heading into this year was no injuries. I didn't get my wish.
Nope.
Didn't get my wish. But nonetheless, it's here. So it's time to lock in and cheer on the Reds.
Part of that, too, you talked about those injuries. Even before yesterday, we were all kind of doom and gloom when you look at the fact that Tyler Stevenson and Spencer Steer on the IL, along with Andrew Abbott and Alexis Diaz, which at the time was the newest addition to the IL. But he no longer holds that title because, well, technically he does. Hopefully he holds on to that title, because if he doesn't hold on to that title, that means the next name that we're about to talk about is going to potentially be added to that list, obviously, and that's Austin Hayes, who was one of the additions that the Reds made during the offseason 2 years ago, put up all-star caliber numbers and a lot of expectations for him to contribute and produce for the Reds this season. But, however, because he's not the name that we anticipated this offseason, especially this offseason when you have your front office telling you that it was all about upgrading in the outfield and getting a power bat and that type of thing, Austin Hayes it was not the name that we were hoping for. So I feel like we haven't given him the full level of respect that maybe we should be when the guy is healthy. Unfortunately, he did not play last night, and unfortunately there's lots of reports coming out, especially during the Reds on Radio broadcast last night, that Austin Hayes is a little banged up, and they're supposed to get more information today as far as the diagnosis of what's going on and how long he could potentially be out. I hope it's not a long absence by any means. But another name that we're keeping an eye out for, another name in a position group that couldn't afford another injury, and now it's officially happened. We just don't know how long he's going to be out.
This is just a brutal blow. I've had, for the past 2 days, people in my mentions telling me how okay this outfield is. That's true when they're healthy. I mean, it's like if they have guys that are available to play the sport, then yeah, the outfield's fine. But you lost Spencer Steer. You're going to lose possibly Austin Hayes. Again, that news hasn't broke as to how severe the calf is. We'll find out hopefully today. Terry Francona said you'll have more information today. But the fact of the matter is, we find that information out last night on the radio broadcast in the 7th inning. That's how we're breaking the news that Austin Hayes is potentially out for a significant amount of time. There needs to be a better system than that. I don't know why we find out so late. I don't know the protocols. Hopefully this is precautionary, but again, if it's not, this is a devastating blow to an outfield that's already not good. Left field, it's going to be a mystery. Gavin Lux is going to be forced to play out there. And then you have Jake Fraley, Will Benson probably in right, TJ in center with whoever else is, possibly going to platoon out there, Stuart Fairchild, Blake Dunn, and the rest of them. So if we don't have Austin Hayes, then I imagine Will Benson gets the call right back up to the majors, and we go pretty much run it back without Spencer Steer. That's pretty much our outfield.
Yeah.
You talk about, we all wanted a power outfield bat. We're going to run that last night in the 7th inning that Austin Hayes is dealing with an injury. And I kind of figured it. He wasn't in the lineup. He was the only, I think, Red starter that wasn't in the lineup.
Yeah.
So I pretty much had a feeling that was going to be the case. But, boy, it doesn't stop me from getting frustrated and down in the dumps about it.
My only hope for the outfield this year was to be wrong about Austin Hayes.
Yeah.
And have him be a massive, impactful player, have $5 million be the steal of the millennium, and have him be back to all-star form a couple of years ago. Now he's going to start the year probably on the IL, which is, that if you're going down the list after yesterday, losing Spencer Steer, what did we say? Outfield is where we have the least amount of wiggle room because we're bad when we're healthy. Now the two guys that we're supposed to have the most excitement about out there, I know TJ Friedel is, this 4-WAR player when he's healthy. Hopefully we get that again this year. But the other two guys outside of him that we were supposed to have the most excitement about, the only addition we made, and then obviously Spencer Steer, which some of this fan base is split on, but no one argues that he's one of the better bats in this lineup. I think that's one of the worst case scenarios you could have going into opening day tomorrow is to lose those two guys because that's really all you had to hold on to out there. You have a guy that you said wasn't going to make the team, not good enough to play for an abysmal outfield. Now Will Benson's going to be back. So that's it's certainly not a good place to be. And, you hate to see that happen before you even play a single game.
Yeah.
What did you guys think? Again, last night, a meaningless exhibition game. I completely get that. And, who they had in left field is that a result of someone that they're looking at to play in left field, or because a lot of the options to play in that left field spot were playing on the futures roster, whatever you want, the prospect roster, if you will? Gavin Lux did play in left field last night in that exhibition game. And I didn't really pay attention to how he looked in left field, to be quite honest with you. But is that a result of, okay, all their options are on the prospects roster, like Will Benson or whatever, or do you think there's something there? Could we see Gavin Lux in left field tomorrow if there's bad news with Austin Hayes?
Yeah, you can see Gavin Lux out there. That's why he was brought in. I disagree with that reasoning as to why he was brought in, but that's why he was brought in, because he can play any position, and he's not going to complain about it. So I think he's serviceable. I think he's a good enough infielder, which means he's going to be a good enough outfielder. Obviously, that mantra probably didn't work well with Spencer Steer. I still don't think Spencer Steer is as bad as everybody says, but certainly is not good defensively. And maybe Gavin Lux is a slight improvement in a position where he's never really played before. But Gavin Lux, I do imagine, will be in the outfield for a decent chunk of this season. And if he's not in the outfield, then I'd imagine he'd be DHing or somewhere like that. He's going to play a lot of games. I might have been wrong about that, Tick. He's going to play a lot of games for the Cincinnati Reds simply because he has to. And maybe that's part of the reason why they brought him in, is because you can't rely on all these guys to stay healthy. It's just a long season. So I'm not disappointed. I'm not disappointed that he has to play out there. It's just, I would have liked to have a bunch of set outfielders that can contribute to the team and be healthy. I'm not going to get my wish, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. As far as the other minor leaguers, I don't think, I don't know who else would have like outfield wise, because I don't think they've got too many of them. Outside of Will Benson, that's pretty much, Reese Hines, I guess, if you wanted to throw him in the outfield, but not really an outfielder anymore either. So I'm okay with it. I'm not angry with it. I'm okay with it, and we'll go from there.
So obviously it's upsetting to hear another key injury to the outfield. But during the pregame, when Terry Francona addressed the media, when you hear what he had to say about Austin Hayes, us as fans, we look at the numbers from 2 years ago. We look at the numbers last year, and we're like, well, I guess if we get that guy from 2 years ago, we'll be okay. But then you hear Terry Francona kind of speak on the impact that Austin Hayes has on this roster, not just with the bat in his hand in the lineup, but just overall as a guy in that clubhouse. Interesting takeaways here. It was posted on X on the Chatterbox side of things, but here's what Terry Francona had to say regarding Austin Hayes last night.
What impressed you the most about the spring Austin Hayes had?
A lot of things. One is level professionalism. You hear about guys, but then when you're actually with them every day, watching him run the bases every day with his head up, knowing where the ball is. When he's a trail runner, never giving an inch. Like, this kid plays baseball the way you're supposed to. That's, he's going to do some damage at the plate. Just seeing the other part of him was really impressive.
That's the things, again, we as fans, we don't pay attention to those things. We don't see those things in spring. We're just like, what can you do with the bat in your hand? Obviously, he's going to do some damage at the plate, as you just heard Terry Francona say, but it's a little bit of that veteran leadership, too, making smart plays out on the base paths, just being a smart baseball player. That's where we talked a lot last year about how this team can improve. Even if they don't make big improvements to the roster, how can they make gradual to big improvements with the same roster from last year? A lot of it is we screamed about fundamentals all last year with David Bell, the accountability thing, like who's holding him accountable when they're constantly making these mistakes. Adding a couple of those veteran pieces in there to obviously just be smart baseball players and make the right plays and smart plays, that's the impact that Austin Hayes is going to have, and hopefully we don't have to wait long to see it. But interesting takeaway from Francona there.
Yeah, it's a massive blow. I mean, that's what I take away from this. It's a massive blow to the team if we don't have Austin Hayes. And Kinner said it kind of at the beginning of last segment, maybe. I kind of forget. My time is, again, when I get in this studio, my time loses everything. But, when you can rely on a guy like Austin Hayes, a guy that maybe I and other Reds fans didn't respect fully enough, right? When they signed him, when they brought him in for pretty much $5 million. I mean, that's a great signing. It's a great signing by Nick Krall. I wish they would have done more for the outfield. I wish they would have done more. But saying that, the one good signing they had, now in question as to whether or not he's going to be available to start this season. I hate that. Especially after the great spring that he had. It's going to be a long way up for the Reds, I think, going forward. When you don't have your starting catcher, when you don't have a key contributor in the outfield, we're losing guys left and right here, and it's bumming me out.
Yeah, every time Terry Francona stepped to the podium this entire offseason, it's been, praising Austin Hayes and saying, every time he's asked about him, saying how great of an addition he was, how excited he was, to coach him and everything along those lines. And now, we're going to lose, like I just said, one of very few pieces that we had to be excited about in this outfield for who knows how long, hopefully a very short amount of time. But it's as bad as you can get. Outside of losing the middle infield, losing these two outfielders are probably the worst, possible injuries that you could have going into the season because the depth is just impossible. So, I'm very, very concerned about how this outfield's going to look just watching this team play. I mean, it's going to be a couple positions that are pretty tough to watch. So we'll see what happens, but hopefully these guys can get healthy because the Reds didn't do enough in the outfield to be competitive if they are healthy. So if they aren't healthy, who knows how it looks.
Another thing about last night that I thought was interesting as well, we talked about the IL. You have Tyler Stevenson, you have Spencer Steer, you have Andrew Abbott, and obviously Alexis Diaz. And we hope that, with everything we've talked about Austin Hayes, we're still waiting for an update on what the outlook for, his injury is and how long he could potentially be out. But Spencer Steer is on the IL list, but I think a lot of people were kind of taken back last night because, he had an at-bat last night. His first at-bat last night, Steer was in, he came into DH for the Reds prospect team. And, obviously taking some at-bats last night. He's capable of taking at-bats. Obviously the shoulder strange injury. Obviously, he was quoted just a couple days ago of saying he can't throw. Like, that's the problem is he has no strength. He's not able to make aggressive throws, and that's what you kind of need in the outfield, but he can still step in the box and give you some at-bats. Obviously, that's one key perk to the DH slot is that option right there of not being, if you can't use him in the, the outfield or the infield anywhere, you could at least put a bat in his hand, and that's what he's best at. We're not going to see that, though, right? Like, was that the first and last at-bat we're going to see of him for quite some time, do you think?
I don't know. I again, this stuff to me is all pretty crazy. And by the way, we're having arguments in the chat, Kenner, right now about as to whether or not the Reds are an injury-riddled team. They've used the most players in franchise history back-to-back seasons. I don't know what else we can do here. It's okay to be excited about the Reds and have concerns that the depth just isn't there when everybody gets hurt. I don't understand why that's a massive topic, and right now it clearly is in our chat. And sorry for the radio listeners if you're not in the radio, Chatterbox Sports off the bench on YouTube. But it's just like, are you not concerned about these injuries? I mean, I'm petrified of them. I'm scared. I'm very scared. You can be excited about Reds baseball and also be scared that we have a lot of guys that have not played a lot of baseball over the past 2 years. I hate to go down the list, so I'm not going to. But they've used a lot of players a lot of non-major league players over the last 2 seasons, and this team isn't built for that. This team is not built to have a bunch of minor leaguers out there playing 162 games. That's all I'm saying. I don't think this is a crazy debate, and it's like I'm going to war here for no reason. It's nonsense.
Part of the argument here being used for the Reds not being concerned about injuries going into the season is Elly, Matt McLain, CES, Gavin Lux, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo are healthy. Those are our best players. Out of that list, Elly De La Cruz is the only one that doesn't have major injury concerns.
Yeah.
Gavin Lux missed the entire year last year, or half the year last year. Matt McLain missed the whole year. Hunter Green's had Tommy John before. We know Nick Lodolo. We hold our breath every time he pitches. I mean, every single player down this entire lineup has massive, massive injury concerns going into the season, and the Reds didn't address the depth in a way that makes us confident about losing anyone. And I think that's why the concern is so high, especially in this room, is just because why would we have faith that these guys play 120 games? We've never seen it before. The last 2 years with this core up, they've used the most players they've ever used before because these guys can't stay on the field. So I don't understand how you can't be concerned about the injuries of this team. And if they aren't hurt right now, when will they come? Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when with a lot of these guys. At least that's what they've proven year in and year out.
And Sirboy keeps saying in the chat, are they hurt right now? No, but other guys are. So if they go down, we have nothing. That's all I'm saying here. We don't have a lot of room to not have guys play baseball. That's all I'm saying. Sorry I hijacked your question, Kinner. But it's crazy to me. We're talking about a team that has had a lot of players used over the last several years. We have pitching depth. I'll give them that. We have a lot of pitching depth, and that's going to be a part of the reason why the Reds are competitive this year. A large reason. It has to be. They didn't really improve the offense at all. So that means the pitching staff's going to have to carry the load. That's what it's going to be. And if Andrew Abbott can come back and he can be healthy, that's great, but Andrew Abbott hasn't been healthy down the stretch ever. That's just a fact of the matter. Nick Lodolo has not been healthy for a full year. I can rely on Elly De La Cruz and Hunter Green. That's who I've got. Those are my locks. Those are the guys that I can back on to be at least mostly healthy, play an entire season. It was Spencer Steer coming into this year.
That was his main thing.
He's been hurt for 4 months. So, I'm trying to level my expectations. If you guys want to be very, very excited and not worry about anything, that's great. I'm very happy for you. But opening day is tomorrow. We're down a starting outfield. We're down a starting left. We're down two starting outfielders, and we're down a starting catcher. And I'm hoping that the Reds can overcome that. But it's a lot of things to overcome.
No, and again, when you look at all of these in isolated situations, it's not overwhelming. But then when you start stockpiling these, and camp was good for 2 weeks. Camp was good. I know there was, obviously a limited throwing program for Rhett Lauder. Andrew Abbott, they were bringing him along slowly. Andrew Abbott's the injury I'm concerned about the least. It sounds like this is just giving him time they don't want to ramp it up and throw him out there too quickly. They want to make sure he's ready to go 100%. Not as concerned about that. I think that the Reds, we did a topic on this a while back of what position group can the Reds afford. You don't want injuries, but which one could they least afford to have key injuries to? I think my answer was the outfield because it wasn't very strong to start with. So if you take any decent piece away, it just gets significantly worse from a bar that was pretty low to begin with. The fact that Andrew Abbott's out, I look at the starting pitching as still being a strength of the Reds heading into the season, and that's with one of their 5 guys out right now. So luckily that's the case there, but obviously it could be semi-positive. Trevino, the fact that they did sign him to that extension, they did get a veteran catcher to come in, one of the best defensive catchers in baseball. Is he going to provide the offensive pop that Tyler Stevenson does? No, but at least he's going to provide that deep. There's not going to be a piece there that can't hit and can't defend. He at least brings something to the table, so there's a little positivity there. But the outfield, they're gutted. If there's no Austin Hayes and no Spencer Steer, what was already their weakness to begin with when healthy, it's just a glaring concern at this point if Austin Hayes is going to be out for some time. And are they injury riddled? I don't know how you could say that they're not. You brought up a good point. I don't know if some of the people in the chat have seen the graphic. I wish I would have saved it. I think it was The Athletic or somebody, or Spot Track or whatever, have put out the teams that have used the most players over the last couple of seasons, and the Reds are right there at the top. They have used more players than any other team out there, and it's just insane because it's either they don't have good players and they're constantly trying to find the right ones, or they're just constantly banged up and constantly galling guys up. And we saw that last September. As good as Rhett Lauder was in September, it wasn't his time. It had to be his time because they literally had nobody that was capable of throwing the baseball at that time.
Yeah, right. That's right. And people are saying, well, if everyone's going to get hurt, what's the reason to be excited about Reds baseball? I'm excited for every single Bengals game, and every time Joe Burrow drops back to throw, I can't breathe because I think he's going to get hurt and we're going to lose a season. So to be worried about injuries from guys that have been hurt in the past, that's just the nature of watching sports when guys miss so much time. Every time Matt McLain steps in the batter's box or fields a ground ball, I'm going to be holding my breath this year. Probably for the first 50 or 60 games, just because I know how much he means to this team and I know how injuries have derailed the last couple of years. I'm absolutely excited to watch Reds baseball tomorrow, and I think everyone should be. It's very fun. But if you're not concerned about this team getting hurt and it potentially derailing our season, we've watched different Reds teams over the last 2 years, because that's the reason that I'm holding on to that we failed last year. That last year was so embarrassing and so far below expectations was because of the injuries. So the fact that can derail a season in and of itself, and this year I'm not supposed to be worried about it, I just can't find those two things to come together.
I mean, the starting closer for 2 years isn't available to start the season, and might not be available at all this year based on how he pitched in the spring.
Right.
So who knows? I mean, there's a lot of question marks. Be excited about the Reds, please. Be excited.
Absolutely. And we talked yesterday about the importance of getting out to that hot start. I don't think, even when healthy, I don't think anyone looks at this team as a legit World Series contender, but I think that there's enough weapons there to compete for a wild card, compete for the division. And we went back and looked over the last 10 years. 9 of the last 10 World Series champions were all sitting in first place in their division at the end of the first month of the season. So when people say we don't win a World Series in April, yeah, well, the Reds have been eliminated from the playoffs by the end of April more times than not at this point. So getting off to a hot start to set the tone for the year is what you want. And setting the tone right now is a lot of injury talk, which is tough when this team didn't make a lot of big moves in the offseason, and there's a lot of question marks about the durability of this team even before we get to opening day coming up tomorrow. But let's pick up with this when we come back. We also are going to have Paul Frerier to talk Xavier basketball around the corner as they have a new head coach with Richard Pitino. We're going to talk about all of that and more coming up around the corner, more off the bench next. We'll turn our attention to Xavier basketball coming up here in a moment. They have a new head coach and Richard Pitino. Kind of cool, the Big East. Little Pitino family affair. Paul Frerier will join us coming up here in just a few moments. Not last thing on the Reds, because we'll get back into the Reds coming up here later on in the program, but Spencer Steer stepping up in the box last night to DH, a guy that's on the IL that I did not expect to see or hear his name for quite some time as far as, contributing on the field. Was that weird? I mean, it's an exhibition game. It means nothing. He was obviously working out at spring training, even though he's going to start the season on the IL. But was that strange last night seeing him get some DH at-bats? And if this team does get thin enough, do you pull him off the IL and do you use him just in a DH situation? Obviously, that's not the most ideal. You're taking a roster spot from somebody that can hit and play defense. But if this outfield gets thin enough or this offense gets thin enough, is that an option, do you think, if he could potentially be out for the year?
I don't know, man. I'm hesitant to say you can just use him as a bat if he's not fully healthy, right? I mean, that's kind of where I am with it. If he's not going to be healthy, then he's not healthy. I wouldn't want to try. It's not a Shohei Ohtani situation where, if he can't pitch, he can hit. And he can hit 50 home runs. This isn't that, So if he's not healthy, if he's not ready to go, I have a hard time believing that we can just put him at DH and everything will be okay. I hope that's the case. I'm not going to say that that's going to be a realistic option. Obviously, I would like it to be the case, but I don't think that's the case.
I would only like it to be the case if we are very confident it can't get worse. I would hate to rush Spencer Steer back to DH before he's not healthy and then lose him for the whole season when you could have kept him out another month and change or whatever and had a full Spencer Steer back for the back half. I think this is something that the Reds should be very, very careful about. I know we're talking, day in and day out now about how important Spencer Steer's bat is in this lineup and how an injury to him can derail the whole season, but I would rather have Spencer Steer than a shell of Spencer Steer trying to battle through a shoulder injury and just DH. So I think if the trade-off, is a couple weeks or a month to try to get him healthy and come back, then I would rather have a full version of him. But if we have, some assurances that it can't get worse and it's a long road for him to be back in the outfield, then absolutely, you got to use him. You got to make sure you get that bat out there and can make a difference in this team. So I think it's a very slippery slope, but certainly hope we get to see Spencer Steer sooner rather than later.
Yeah, again, I hope that we're going to see him. And I think by everything that's been coming out, I think he should be ready at some point this season. I don't think we'll have to wait for too long, God willing. But, it is something to keep your eye on.
Yeah, and Jake, you said, something that could get worse. The one thing we've learned as Reds fans, it could always get worse. It could always get worse. There's always that little room for that when it's all said and done. So if that's the case, did you have a problem with him DHing last night? Because, again, I kind of did. I'm like, and by the way, if surgery is inevitable, the sooner you get the surgery done, the better. Like, I don't know what you're prolonging this for. I just thought last night him hitting it all was kind of silly. I wasn't a big fan of it, but again, I'll just be labeled negative like always if that's the case. But I just thought that was kind of ridiculous to me. And unless they are truly planning on using him in a limited capacity that way, just to take advantage of his bat, if they truly need some offensive pop. But if he's on the IL because he's hurt, I'm not a fan in a meaningless exhibition game throwing him at bats, even if it's only he's on the IL because he can't throw and he could still have at bats. I just thought that was a weird move last night. Not the end of the world, though, but still thought it was strange.
If you can't play for the Reds, I have a problem with you playing for other people. I think that's just kind of a blanket take. If you're not healthy enough to play for the Reds and be on the roster on opening day, I don't really know why you're taking swings for, the minor league team in an exhibition game. I feel like we should be focused on trying to get such a crucial player back to health, and maybe that's part of the rehab.
Yeah.
And he has to be doing that and that's the plan that he's on, and that's great. And maybe they wanted to see how the shoulder would react to a few swings and see if they can run him out there, sooner rather than later. And if that's the case, it's a completely different story. But if it was just fanfare or he was, wanting to swing the bat again, then I definitely do have a problem with it. Where I'm not going to go, over the deep end is we don't know. That we don't know. We're not in the locker room. We're not the trainers. We don't know what his plan is. So I'm not going to go too far over the deep end. But if that was just fanfare and trying to get Spencer Steer swings for fun, then I certainly would have a problem with it.
All right, good stuff. Reds opening day tomorrow. We'll have more Reds coming up for you here around the corner. But big news last night. Look, it was announced a couple days ago that Sean Miller was leaving Xavier to take the Texas job. It led to multiple debates about, did he do Xavier dirty by coming back when, they gave him a second shot and then, he wasn't loyal. He takes the Texas job, or did he do what he was supposed to? All that's in the past now because they now have a new head coach. And what do you guys think about that new head coach? Paul Frerier is going to hang out with us. We're going to discuss what led to the hiring of Richard Pitino. How close were they to hiring Chris Mack? Did they make the right decision? We'll get to all of that and more. Paul Frerier joins us when we return. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by UDF. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rinning, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Open up the show with some headlines. Talked a little bit about the Cincinnati Reds. They were in action last night in their final spring training / exhibition / celebration game, if you will, before opening day tomorrow. No injuries happened on the field last night, but the big headline from last night was, of course, the announcement that Austin Hayes is sidelined with an injury for right now, and we just don't know the severity of it, and we'll get more updates throughout the day, and we'll be keeping an eye for that update for you here shortly. But we'll get back into the Reds talk coming up in a second. But excited to bring on our next guest, Paul Frerier, hanging out with us here today, talking a little Xavier Musketeers, and, of course, Xavier at the forefront of the conversation for a lot of people right now because we were expecting them to name a new head coach. We expected that coach, obviously, to be Chris Mack. He is not the head coach. Obviously, they're going in the direction of Richard Pitino. How do you think all of this went down as far as Richard Pitino when he became a legitimate candidate? Were you hearing rumblings of this, or were you, like everybody else, just assuming that Chris Mack was going to be coming back for another run?
Well, I wasn't assuming. First of all, thanks for having me on, Kinner. I appreciate it. I was not assuming that Mack would be the head coach. I did very much think that Chris Mack would be the leading candidate for this job. I thought that this was a job in the end that would go to Chris Mack. But if there's one thing we know about Xavier's athletic director, Greg Christopher, it's that even though over the last 7 years when he's had to make a hire, even when the hire feels obvious, he's always done his due diligence. If you think back to Travis Steele, right, and some of the names that he interviewed back in Travis Steele, it's a few of the biggest names. TJ Otzelberger was on that list. There were names that Xavier reached out to back in the day when Travis Steele got that job back in 2018. But even still, looking back in 2018, the Travis Steele hire was a layup, right? That was a job that Travis Steele had been working for a long time. He was an assistant under Chris Mack. It was only a matter of time before he got that job. Even though it was a shoo-in that Travis Steele would get the job, Greg Christopher still went out, did his due diligence, interviewed other candidates, wanted to see what the national landscape was about, and then, in the end, hired Travis Steele. In 2022, again, it was a layup. Sean Miller coming back to Xavier, wanting to land on his feet, wanting to get back into coaching after taking the year off, hires Sean Miller. Now here in 2025, Chris Mack obviously had a ton of interest in the job. That was very public. There was no doubt about it that Chris had a ton of interest in it. But we also knew that Greg Christopher was going to be interviewing other candidates. Drew Valentine from Loyola got an interview. You had Richard Pitino, obviously, on that list. There were some other names thrown around. Alan Huss from High Point. John Fanta reported a few names last night on the Twitter Spaces that I did. In the end, though, I did always keep coming back to the fact that I thought it would be Chris Mack. But now what I'm wondering is, was the interest more one-sided? Was a lot of what happened with Chris coming from Chris's camp? And in the end, Greg Christopher and the Xavier administration wanted to hire outside of the family. I mean, this is the first time since 2001 when Thad Matta came to Xavier. This is the first time Xavier's made an outside hire in that long. You went Thad Matta, then went Sean Miller. Chris Mack was an assistant to Sean Miller. Travis Steele was an assistant to Chris Mack. Sean Miller comes back. This is a major shakeup in the landscape of the Xavier basketball program. And to be quite honest, fellas, I think this is a phenomenal hire.
I love the hire, to be honest with you. And I know, like, the thing is, so Chris Mack obviously tied to Xavier. Everyone thought that was a done deal, just like everyone thought Richard Pitino to Villanova was pretty much the done deal on that side of things. When you stack up the Villanova job to the Xavier job, obviously, you look at the Big East right now. I mean, Villanova, in your opinion, Richard Pitino, is it a surprise that he picked Xavier over Villanova? Is Xavier the better job than Villanova? Were you surprised that Richard Pitino picked the Musketeers over Villanova?
I've heard conflicting reports in the last 18. There's been a lot of information thrown around, Kinner, of what's true and what's not true that I've been trying to figure out. Did Pitino have an offer at Villanova that he turned down to take the Xavier job? I've heard that he chose the Xavier job originally over the Villanova job and that Villanova wasn't ever really in play. So I'm trying to sift through what's true and what's not, because obviously those are conflicting reports. Can't both have those things true. But, from a resource perspective, from what Xavier can give Pitino with the donors behind him and with the support of the program behind him, Villanova has won 2 national championships in the last decade. They have a very prominent donor base. I would say that Xavier is as well positioned as almost any school in the Big East for success here going forward, especially if everyone rallies around Richard Pitino and gives him the resources that he needs. Because if you look at his rosters and when he has won, Minnesota is a notoriously tough job to win at. He took him to a couple NCAA tournaments, but he was also very young when he was there. And now he goes to New Mexico, wins back-to-back Mountain West titles, goes to back-to-back NCAA tournaments, and you have some of the most superior talent from a backcourt, from everything else that you had last year, to then have to replace that. Jamal Mashburn, JT Toppin, Jalen House, gone. And you have to replace that coming in this past season. And he did that. And he was doing that at New Mexico, to my knowledge. I don't want to speak for New Mexico if anybody's listening to this, but I'm fairly confident that Xavier, from an NIL perspective, will set Richard Pitino up better than what he was getting at New Mexico. So if he's doing all of that at New Mexico, I'd like to think that that will only improve and get better with the resources that he has at Xavier.
I listened to your spaces last night, Paul. You did a great job with Johnny Fanta.
Thank you very much, Elliot.
You're welcome. I think I found one thing pretty interesting, and I'm curious to see your thoughts on this. Xavier, I don't know what the national media perspective is on Xavier. I as a UC fan, I don't keep much into the what's going on in the Xavier world too much. But I think one thing right now that you're going to get is a lot of interest in the Xavier Musketeers with the Pitino leading your helm. How much national interest do you think there's going to be on the Xavier Musketeers this season?
I mean, you just think about it. Richard Pitino got a tweet from ESPN's main account. Sean Miller was not announced from ESPN's main account, right? I mean, it just goes to show that the Pitino name carries a lot of weight. The fact that you are going to have at least 2, if not 3, matchups every year between Richard Pitino and his father in the Big East. You're going to see him come to Cintas, then you're going to see him, I'm sure, go to Madison Square Garden. They're not going to play that game at Carnesecca. This is a headline-making move because Richard Pitino is going to win. With the resources that Xavier can give him, he's going to win games. And if he gets Xavier to a point where he is developing this program and consistently winning year over year, I don't know how long Rick is going to be coaching at St. John's, and I don't mean to say he's going to leave for somewhere else. He's getting a little up there in age. I don't know how long he's going to be at St. John's, but let's just say it's 3 years, right? Let's just say we get at least 6 matchups between Xavier and St. John's and Richard Pitino and his father. I don't think if you're Xavier, you don't make this hire to grab a headline and to do it for the publicity. You make this hire because it's the right basketball decision. But when you can marry those two things, you do that, and that's what they did.
Sean Miller, is this a betrayal, or is this just how college sports goes?
I have no ill will towards Sean Miller. Absolutely none. He made a decision to go down to Texas to do what he felt he needed to do in his career, to go down to Texas and try to get to a Final Four, try to win a national championship, be a part of the SEC and what that conference has become. He feels like the resources that he has at Texas will set him up the best for success here in the near future. And I wish him all the best down there. He gave me an opportunity. He allowed me to cover the team. I'm very grateful for that. I have no ill will towards him, and that's what I'll say on that.
Yeah, looking forward to next year. the roster construction. I found this pretty interesting. Going forward with a lot of college basketball teams, you're starting to see it. Woj now a GM of St. Louis. Do you think Xavier would ever
the Bonnies put some respect on the Bonnies? He loves the Bonnies.
St. Bonaventure.
It's all A10 though. It's all it's all A10. Yeah,
A10 doesn't
tweeted
matter.
A Woj tweet for a transfer.
Yeah, I think UC might be poking their head at getting a GM. What are your thoughts on Xavier possibly getting a GM going forward?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to how Richard Pitino is going to construct his staff. I don't know there. But what I will say is the GM position in college basketball is a really intriguing one to me. And it's something that I want to dive into in the offseason because it seems like it's this hot button issue, right, Elliot? Like it's hold on. That's my bad. It seems like it's this hot button issue to be a GM in college basketball right now. And what I am curious to hear is how many of these GMs actually have roster making decisions? How many coaches at the end of the day are trusting these GMs to actually make roster decisions out of the portal so that the coaches can then coach their team? Or are these GMs just negotiating with agents on NIL, trying to do a lot of the back-end administrative work, all of those things? But at the end of the day, it's really the coaching staff that's making all the roster decisions. I think there are GMs that will make a lot of those calls on who they get and players, things like that. And I think there are a lot of coaches that will still want full control, but just don't want to have to deal with, a college athlete asking for more money and having to negotiate that. Let that role go to the GM.
I've always been fascinated by that too. When you talk about the NIL, because the conflict is the coaches can't run the NIL, and you have your collectives, and usually those are big ego personnel that's running those, and they want to be the ones that say, "Hey, that big star that's running up and down the floor, we did that. We're responsible for that." But and then the pressures of because that collective gave so much money to this player, and the coach doesn't want to play that player. There's some kind of conflict. It's the coach's fault. This can get so messy. So it's like placing a GM that the head coach trusts and that there's just a little bit more unison. I think that plays a pivotal role in all of this as this gets messier and messier. What is, not that you have dollar amounts, and that's not really what I'm asking, but has there been any complaints, any concerns about Xavier's health of their NIL collective? Are they in a healthy spot from a collective standpoint, in your opinion?
Very healthy. I think Xavier's actually set up in the top half of the Big East in NIL. And one asterisk I guess I would put on that is that the whole situation's so fluid, right? I mean, year to year, another school could come in and have a $1 billion donation and the whole thing flips upside down. But the one thing that Xavier will be set up for success for going forward, and there's still a lot that needs to be clarified on this, is the revenue sharing. Because Xavier doesn't have to worry about football. The Big East doesn't have to worry about football. They can dedicate their rev share money to men's basketball and give their programs as much financial support as they can to set them up for success. So from an NIL standpoint, I think Xavier is in a great spot in the top half of the Big East. And I think the national media has really been outwardly spoken about that. You saw Matt Norlander talk about that yesterday. You saw Rob Doster talk about that yesterday. There's been a lot of national support for Xavier in the last 24 hours, especially comparing the Xavier and Texas jobs, which if you look at the facilities of Xavier in Texas and you just look at everything that Texas has compared to what Xavier has, you just jumping off a page, you could see the facility difference. But from a fan support perspective, from a financial support perspective at Xavier and the dedication that Xavier has to making sure their program advances into the future, I don't really have any concerns from that side of things. But it's so fluid that it changes every offseason, and we're only a few off seasons into it. I do think that water is going to find its level on the NIL front here in the next couple of off seasons with revenue sharing, with maybe some things coming back down to normal in the NIL world. We'll see, because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. That just can't happen. But is there any regulation to it? We'll see. A lot of unanswered questions right now, Kenner. I'll tell you that.
Paul Frerier hanging out with us here. I appreciate you popping on last minute with us. Thank you. But the last thing on the way out, like, obviously new coach coming in. Richard Pitino had a lot of success at New Mexico because he has a lot of really good players. Obviously, he has that Conference Player of the Year on his roster that everyone's kind of, Villanova fans were excited thinking that he was going to bring him there. What's obviously there's some current players remaining from the Sean Miller era, obviously coming in. Richard Pitino has had to bring his guys in. What's the transfer portal look like right now for Xavier? What's the hopes that they do land that star player that they have over at New Mexico? And yes, I am purposely not saying his name because I spaced and don't remember it, to be quite honest.
Donovan Dent. Yeah, Donovan Dent. He will be Donovan Dent will be an All-American guard next year. And there are the biggest names in college basketball, Kansas, Kentucky. The biggest names are pursuing Donovan Dent right now. It has been reported that he is going to drive quite the NIL number this offseason, and what he ends up getting, where he ends up going, is going to be a major question as to how Xavier's roster develops, because I did see a report last night that he had interest in following Pitino to his next job if he took another job. Whether Xavier, has the money or chooses to spend the money to go get Donovan Dent, I will be very interested, because if you think about it, Ryan Conwell has played at a different school every year he's been in college. He started at South Florida, then transferred to Indiana State, came back home a little bit, then transferred up to Xavier. Does Ryan Conwell want to stick around and not play for a fourth different school in 4 years? He'll have to play for his fourth different coach, but does he want to play for his fourth different school in 4 years? Or does he like the stability of being at Xavier? You pair Ryan Conwell with Donovan Dent, and then I don't imagine Dalen Swain comes back next year. I think Dalen Swain is headed up to Jacob Tissett territory. But if you're able to keep Dalen Swain, now here's the thing, that NIL number, to be able to keep Ryan Conwell, Dalen Swain, and Donovan Dent on the same roster, I don't know where you piece the rest of the roster together. I'm just purely speaking of two guys that were on Xavier's team this year, and then you add the best player from New Mexico. That would be the best backcourt, or one of the best backcourts in the country starting day one. The perimeter on that team would be incredible, and then you pair that with whatever you can get out of the transfer portal in the front court. You do have Lucina Traore, who tore his ACL before the season. He is not declared for the transfer portal yet. Neither has Roddy Anderson, who was supposed to be Xavier's point guard next year, paired with Nick Lewis, an incoming high school recruit. So you have a few guys that are still at Xavier that haven't put their name in the portal yet. Just a handful, but a few. And then obviously I'm sure New Mexico, their team and their returners will put their name in the portal. So can you go get a guy like Donovan Dent or True Washington or one of them and get them to follow Coach Pitino to Xavier? I would not be shocked if at least one or two players from New Mexico make their way to Xavier. Look, New Mexico just beat Marquette in the NCAA tournament. And to be quite honest, pretty solidly beat Marquette and almost beat Michigan State. Really should have beaten Michigan State until Sparty made some plays down the stretch. So I'm excited to see what this roster looks like.
I have one last question. Paul, will the rebound rundown, is that going to be a good place to find the historic crown coverage?
The rebound rundown will have everything you need to know about the crown beginning next Tuesday.
The historic crown.
Oh, the historic crown. Is that how you've branded it?
Yeah, it's going to be big. It's going to be the biggest event in sports.
Are you going out? Are you going there?
To Las Vegas? No, No, unfortunately, it's a Tuesday. It's a work day at noon. So I'll have other plans. Unfortunately,
well, it's the middle of the summer. Take a vacation.
You're right. I guess I could.
Let me ask you this, Elliot. Under 250 people in that arena for that game.
Do the players count or no?
No, spectators.
Okay, spectators.
Training staff and players do not count.
Okay, then I would take the under, and I'd probably take the under on players as well. Active
Cincinnati
players.
and DePaul. 3:00 Eastern, right?
Yeah,
June 15th.
On April Fool's Day, Paul. We'll see you there. It's going to be a real fun party on April Fool's Day in the historic crown.
If you need some viewing between the Final Four, turn on the crown.
Yeah. If you were thinking about the Final Four and you want to see real winners, you take on DePaul, who hasn't made the tournament in 21 years, and you take a look at the Bearcats, haven't made one in 7.
Well, tune into the rundown. I'll have everything you need to know about it. Don't you worry, Elliot.
Thanks, Paul. Will you still be the voice of Xavier, by the way? You still going to lead us into the arena?
Oh, is the MC?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
not as the MC. I'm just talking about the voice outside the arena, like telling us like
That
what
your
kind of
safety
bags.
is my first. Your safety is my first concern. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Paul.
Because if you slip and fall, I guess that's on me. So
It is on you. It is on you. I hate to say that. It is on you.
Yeah. No, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Paul, you the best. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep. See ya.
All right. Good stuff. Off the bench, presented by UDF. We'll pick up with this when we come back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, Jacob Tissett. We'll get their thoughts on Xavier's hiring of Richard Pitino when we come back. Yeah, I hit my elbow. Sorry.
3-2 Al is my favorite countdown we've ever had.
All right, we welcome you back off the bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, Jacob Tissett with you here. Paul Frerier awesome enough to give us a little bit of time. We were anticipating the hiring of Chris Mack to be the new head coach, or the returning head coach, return of the Mack for Xavier, of course, but they go the Richard Pitino route, and we'll get back more into that coming up in a bit. But apparently there's still a big debate in the chat. Are people actually debating and saying that the Reds are not injury prone, that they're not
People
injury
aren't
riddled?
happy. They aren't happy. They aren't happy that we're raining on their parade. And I think that we either have to apologize or defend our stance.
And here's my issue with defending my stance. It just backs me into a corner
where we have to be pessimistic.
Yeah, we don't want to. I don't like being not liked. It's when I was born 25 years ago, there was a switch flipped in my brain that I needed people to like me. I needed people to like and respect me. And now I feel like the chat just, they don't like me because I have to say that the Reds don't have the world's best lineup and they're injury prone. I don't like having to say that all the time, but it's the truth.
I would like the Reds to have the world's best lineup and not be hurt.
Kinner looked at the lineup yesterday, and we posted it out, and Craig so eloquently said under the tweet that, you guys said the outfield wasn't good and then said the lineup was good. Which one is it? I didn't speak in yesterday's clip because I don't think the lineup's the world's best lineup. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I think it's serviceable. But I think the outfield was an issue. And now we looked at that lineup, and now we take away Austin Hayes from it. So who knows? The Reds have a mystery season ahead of us, truly. And that's and for what it's worth, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing not knowing what you have here right now. It's not as good as being the Dodgers and knowing you have first ballot Hall of Famers at every position. That would be the ideal situation. But it's also not terrible to have a season where you don't really know what to expect. Mouse Cop in the chat consistently says, and it's kind of a mocking thing, but Terry Francona's worth 10 wins. Maybe he is, right? Maybe he's significantly better than David Bell, and you're going to see that on the field. Maybe he's not. Maybe you're going to see CES, who we didn't get to really see last year, play like an all-star first baseman. You know, Mark Fetters. Shout out to Mark Fetters. He bet him to lead the league in home runs. If that happens, guess what? The Reds are going to be a really, really good team. Jamier Candelario had I would say, not a great year last year, but showed flashes of power. If Jamier Candelario can hit the cover off the ball for a couple months this year, again, this lineup is going to go from bad to really, really good. So there's a lot of question marks out there. Can Jose Trevino carry his weight offensively? We know what he can do defensively. Can he do it offensively? You know, can the backup guys, the Stuart Fairchilds, the Blake Dunns, the Santiago Espinals, can they contribute at a high level? There's a lot of question marks. And for that reason, you should be excited because you don't know what they are. There's kind of shades, you know, of the 2023 season, right? We were supposed to be bad coming in. Then the guys came up and it's like, all right, what are we now? Are we good? Is this exciting? Yeah, it's exciting. So this is going to be an exciting year. I'm not going to say they're World Series contenders. I'm not going to say they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not going to say they're going to win the division. But what you're going to see is an exciting brand of baseball. And for that reason, I think the Reds have done a good job. You know, you can be a bad team and have bad baseball, right? Shout out to the Chicago White Sox. I wouldn't root for that team if you paid me. But right now the Reds, right, I don't know if they're certainly not White Sox bad. I'm just saying that you don't know exactly how good or bad they are this year. It's a lot of testing. And we'll find out, I would bet, halfway through the year. Through the first month, I'd imagine we'd have a good idea of what the identity of this team is. And hopefully we can start getting guys back and we can start having, you know, in a complete roster feel like we really haven't had for the better part of 4 years. You know, we've lost key contributors for significant chunks of seasons the past several seasons now. You know, in 2021, it was Winker and Castellanos went down. 2022, 2023, 2024, it's been the injury bug that's riddled this Reds team. If they can survive that this year, all the power to them, because that just means when we're healthy, they're going to be damn good. So for tomorrow, they play the San Francisco Giants at 4 o'clock. It's opening day. Get excited about it because there's a lot of mystery that goes into an 162-game season where you don't really know who's going to be that superstar outside of Elly De La Cruz and Hunter Green. We have those two locked. If Matt McLain stays healthy, I love the Reds' chances, you know? But there's a lot of question marks that are going to be answered this year, and then we'll know.
I just feel like it's dangerous for everyone to, you know, hold on to every question mark on this lineup as, well, that's going to be a positive. Because I feel like that's what we did last year. And I feel like I'm in that camp as well, and I think most fans was going into last season, it was, well, we've only seen, you know, so much of so many of these guys, so little, I should say, of so many of these guys. They're all going to be great. They're all going to live up to the highest of their potential. And we know, obviously, last year injuries played a big role in not seeing a lot of those guys in terms of CES, Matt McLain. But outside of Elly, it really didn't feel like anyone on the team last year lived up to their full potential. Hunter Green and the pitching side of it, but I'm talking about the position players. And I think that's kind of what's reset a lot of people going into this year. Without having, you know, last season being so far under what the performance we expected was, I think the mood going into this season would be a lot different. But the fact that we saw, you know, virtually the same lineup go out there last year and not, you know, come close to playoff contention, I think it's hard to get very excited about this year, especially when we've seen the players that we're holding on to the hope of them being great, them being all-star caliber players. We haven't seen them make it through a full season with the exception of Elly De La Cruz. So I think all the worries are warranted, but that's also why tomorrow's probably the most excited I'm going to be for a Reds game all year, is because we don't know what any of these things are. You can be optimistic about a lot of these, you know, question marks. You can, you know, keep calling Elly the MVP of the league. He's the most bet player in the National League to win MVP, 28% of all bets. That's a great place to be for Reds fans. We're going to have an incredibly exciting place or team to watch this year in Cincinnati, and that's only the case if those guys are out there healthy. And I think that's why that's the biggest concern, because the win-loss record at the end of the year doesn't determine how much fun we have this summer. It's how much we get to watch, you know, Elly De La Cruz, Matt McLain, obviously winning 85, 90 games, competing for the division, competing for the wild card. All that stuff adds to that excitement. But the bottom line of how much fun we're going to have watching the Reds this year is how many games Elly De La Cruz, Matt McLain, Hunter Green, how many games they play. Because as soon as they're not out there, this team gets very hard to watch. So that's why the injury concerns are at the forefront of my mind, because if we lose our star players, what do I have for the next 5 months? I have what I had for the last 2 months last year, and it was unwatchable.
And let's say that Elly De La Cruz, and we know last year his name popped up in the MVP conversation, was never a front runner, was never a favorite, but he had an MVP caliber season last year. He's only going to continue to get better. But, you know, if your entire roster is decimated and he's fortunate enough to stay healthy, I mean, constantly being banged up, what does that do? You leave an MVP caliber season on the table. You don't make the playoffs with an MVP caliber season like that. You leave that on the table. We spent so much time during the NFL season with the Bengals talking about the wasted season that was, when you look at what the numbers Joe Burrow put up, the Triple Crown, obviously, from Jamar Chase, and you look at the season that T. Higgins had, and you look at the numbers. If you would have told me last year at this time that the upcoming season, the Joe Burrow was going to throw for 4,700 yards and 40-plus touchdowns, and Jamar Chase was going to have the season he had, and T was going to stay pretty much healthy for the majority of the year and put up the numbers he did, I'd say there's no way in hell that you missed the playoffs. And we've spent so much time talking about all the talent that was wasted with that because of the deficiencies and the injuries and everything around them. Don't want to have that same conversation with the Reds. Also, Elliot's not making this stuff up about the injuries. Like, what has set the bad tone is the fact that you have 4 guys who would be in the starting lineup or the rotation right away are not starting the season because they're on the injured list, and we may be adding a 5th one with Austin Hayes, who was an underwhelming offseason get, but because he was one of the bigger offseason gets, it's still a big blow if he's missing time early on. Look, to make the playoffs, you got to win at least, the 88-90 game range. You got to average about 15 wins a month, right off the bat. You have to be in that, 14, 15 win range per month. Are the Reds capable of doing that with a depleted roster? And it's not just because they're injured. It's because they have no one behind them. The Dodgers, by the way, last year, Shohei Ohtani doesn't even pitch. I saw that ESPN they said they're excited about Shohei this year, who was limited to a hitter's role last year. Oh, he just had a little hitter's role last year. Now he gets to participate in the pitching side, right? They didn't even miss a beat without him last year pitching, as far as that goes. Mookie Betts might be missing some time as he's battling a severe illness right now. They're not worried about losing Mookie Betts for a period of time. There's so much depth with it. There's no depth with the Reds. So even Austin Hayes, an underwhelming get in the offseason, being without him to start the year is a devastating blow. Yeah. Spencer Steer, we could debate how good he is and not. The biggest trait about him was his availability. Now he's not available in a depleted position group that was weak to begin with when healthy. That's devastating to start a season. So I understand both sides. I understand the desire to be optimistic with opening day coming up tomorrow, but let's not act like those who are upset about these injuries. We ended the season injured last year and banged up, and we're picking up right where we left off. And unfortunately, it's with a whole new cast of names. That's the concern. It's not repeat offenders in this. It's just any name is vulnerable to this when you're a Cincinnati Red, and that's the frustrating part.
Very frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. But I hope the Reds go through it. Again, nobody's cheering against the Reds. So,
right. No.
I think it's okay to be cautiously not optimistic.
I mean, the biggest
regarding
positive
the Cincinnati
for
Reds out of all teams.
The biggest positive for Austin Hayes this offseason was, well, at least we didn't sign nobody. And now we're going into opening day with nobody, essentially. So, I mean, that's where we're at. We lost a guy whose biggest positive was, durability. We lost our second or third best bat in the lineup in Tyler Stevenson, depending on where you slot in Matt McLain. Having only seen him for about half a season. Yeah. We lose Spencer Steer, whose availability is his best thing and the best, bat in our outfield. We lose, a pitcher. Obviously, we said, the starting pitching depth is. We've lost key players again leading up to opening day. How can you not be concerned about injuries?
Yeah, I mean, the Reds won 70-something games last year.
And we're going in with
less players.
Holding our breath that the injuries from last year is 20 wins.
I hope.
I saw somebody say that, this is why, we were talking about Will Benson earlier. You're glad you have Will Benson. Are we? No offense to him. I want Will Benson to work. I'm a big Will Benson fan. I just hate that the guy isn't good enough or hasn't been good enough, right? But, the bottom line is the outfield has been so weak. Spencer Steer has been pretty much unavailable throughout most of spring to begin with. They've had if you have Will Benson starting out the season not on the roster, that's his fault. Because the opportunity was there. It's not like there's a backlog in the outfield of he just didn't have the opportunity and he's just a depth piece. If he's not on the roster on opening day, that's because he's just not good enough. And if you're not good enough to fight for an outfield spot when you got no good outfielders out there to begin with, there's no depth. He's not a depth piece. He's not a good piece. This isn't a good outfield. That's the biggest negative. That's the most negative thing I'll say is there's nothing positive about that outfield, not even close. Even when healthy, not very positive. But it's even worse when they're not healthy, and that's where we're at right now. As far as that goes. And the thing is, I never like being that fan. I hate other fan bases when they do why is it always us? We have the worst luck. Why are we always? I think it's a fair question. Why are they always hurt? Why is it every single season, every team has injuries? But does every team have a wave of injuries like this every single season? I think it's a fair question. We'll never get an actual answer to it. Is it somebody's fault? Is it who? Because it doesn't matter who the manager is. It doesn't matter, like David Bell was more loose at spring training and Terry Francona was more aggressive at spring training. He's to blame. No, I don't know who to blame. I don't know if there is anyone to blame. Is it the medical staff that we're not allowed, that we've been given warnings, or at least I have, not to bring up them, so we won't bring up the medicals? I mean, is it the medical staff? Who do you blame?
I think it's bad. I think it's colossal bad luck. I know it's hard to say bad luck year in year out, but that's all I can say at this very moment is bad luck. I don't think there's some conspiracy with the Reds training staff. I really don't, and I don't want to believe that conspiracy either. It's not a very fun conspiracy to have. I just think that the group of guys that we have, they might not have the we're going to be healthy all year gene. I know Elly De La Cruz does, knock on wood. Hunter Green did last year, but there's a lot of guys on this roster that don't have that gene in them. Nick Senzel certainly didn't, and it's unfortunate because nobody's rooting for injuries. It's just unlucky. That's all this is. It's just a whole bunch of unlucky nonsense. And the Reds don't have the funds to replace those injured players with the same caliber type of player, right? It's going to be significantly worse backups. That's baseball. That's the game we play. This is a small market team.
Over under 12 wins for the Reds in the month of April, and we'll include the games in March too. Why not? We'll be nice. Will they have over or under 12 wins heading into May?
Over. There'll be 2 games above 500. 2 games above 500. Though again, the early part of the schedule is more difficult than the last part, but I'm banking the fact that the Reds can sneak a few wins against some good teams who may or may not be as polished as they will be later on in the season. I don't think the Giants are anything spectacular. I think the Giants are comparable to the Reds.
Yeah, but Willy Adames is going to hit like 600.
Willy Adames will hit against the Reds, unfortunately. I think the Rangers are good, but getting the Rangers at home does help. The Brewers, they'll lose that because they always lose it. Then the Giants again out west, they might lose that one. But then after that, I think it's a lot of wins. You play the Pirates in 3. I think the Pirates are a joke. I think by the way, the Pirates, again, that roster is terrible. Paul Skeens, and this is just again an argument in the chat that was had, because you have one good player on a bad roster, it doesn't make it a bad roster. Paul Skeens is really, really good. Yeah. Jared Jones is really, really good. The Pirates roster is terrible. It's terrible. So the Reds will win that one. I think they're better than the Mariners. I think they beat the Mariners in 3 at home. The Orioles, that'll be a toss-up. I think that's a close series. Probably you'd have to favor the Orioles. But then it's Rockies and Marlins, and I think the Cardinals right after that. So there's a lot of, and then the Nationals after that. There's a lot of wins later on in that month where the Reds have to stack them up.
Yeah, that's the thing about this month is you have an ability to get it back, even if you do start slow. Obviously, we don't want to start slow, but I mean those 6 games against Miami and Colorado, you got to win. I mean, you have a chance to say 5-1 in that stretch, get back afloat if you start off slow. So it is nice to have those 6 games at the end of the month, assuming those teams aren't on one of their few hot streaks of the entire year.
Gosh, you remember last year when we were doing this whole game of they were they were mathematically still in the wild card hunt, and they had all the series coming up with the Rockies and the Marlins, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's 7 to 10 wins waiting for us right there. Then we got swept by the Marlins, something crazy like that. It was just a brutal little stretch. I don't want to play that game again. Let's not play that game again.
I don't want to play that game either.
Get off to a hot start so we don't have to hope for wins down the stretch. We just start expecting them. Last thing on this too, because maybe I should have paid more attention to this. I've just been all negative because Spencer Steer on the IL, obviously Tyler Stevenson, Andrew Abbott, and others. Have you guys looked at what the expected timeline is? I mean, obviously that stuff always moves around because it's baseball, but are some of these long-term, IL stints, do you think? How long could we potentially be without some of these guys?
I don't want to speculate on that. I really don't, but I know an oblique injury is not something fun for a catcher to deal with. The Spencer Steer thing, we've had no idea about that injury. Yeah. It seems since we first heard about it before spring training started. The Alexis Diaz thing, again, don't want to speculate what's going on there. I'd say that has probably less to do with an injury and has more to do with his ability on the field. Austin Hayes, we're going to find out hopefully more today. Terry Francona said that. And hopefully Andrew Abbott will be ready to go in a couple weeks or so. So I think Andrew Abbott I'm least concerned about right now at this moment. The rest of the guys, they're toss-ups.
All right, good stuff. Justin Kinner, Elliot Ruring, Jacob Tissett, Casey McAllister with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll step away for a few moments. We'll come back. We'll close out, get your final thoughts on Xavier's hiring of Richard Pitino, but a Bearcat spin on this because I'm curious from Elliot's perspective. If Xavier would have hired Chris Mack, it would have just been the status quo. It would have been a good hire. It was the expected hire. But I don't think it would have been just a national headline. I mean, Paul brought it up a little bit ago that, when they announced that it was Richard Pitino being named the head coach at Xavier, it was all over every major outlet out there. That was a huge deal. Would not have been as huge a deal if Chris Mack is hired, just like it wasn't a huge deal, although it was locally, to Sean Miller leaving Xavier, of course. But does it impact the Bearcats, Richard Pitino, a home run hire like that? If Richard Pitino comes in and elevates Xavier, I mean, they won a tournament game this year already. It's not like Xavier's been bad. But if he elevates them and takes them to that next level, and they are one of the biggest talking points in the country, how much pressure does that add to Cincinnati as they sit back and just continue to wait it out with old Wes Miller? I'm curious Elliot's point, takeaway on that. We'll get to that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, Jacob Tissett with you here. Haven't talked a lot of football, or barely any football today, but let's take a look at that Bengals Super Bowl jacket that we got all Casey wearing. Casey, get a little camera time. We haven't seen you since the opening segment. How are we? How you doing over there?
I'm doing all right.
You should have been throwing yourself up there at least once a segment because that jacket is really cool.
It is. I like it, and I'm not a fan. I love that jacket. That was the closest I have been tempted to be a Bengals fan, just to be able to buy that. I do love that jacket, just to be honest.
Well, it has a lot of bad memories associated with it too. That's why I don't wear it all the time. But
maybe that's why I like it. They're good memories for me. I don't know. It's all in how you spin it, I guess.
That's a tough one. Yeah, maybe I'll pull it out more often. How about that?
Super Bowl merch, obviously, I've only had to deal with championship merchandise one time in my life, but that is a hard line to walk because you have to buy it before the game. Like, all the good stuff will be sold out after the game. So you have to, you're basically gambling. Obviously, for a team like the Bengals, just getting there is enough for us to, wear that as a badge of honor for about, 5 years we're going on?
Oh, yeah.
Woohoo. Man. So that 5 years is about up.
Yeah, we're running out of time. We got to win one. We got to win one. Whew.
But no, we talked a lot. Look, tomorrow's opening day. We'll be more positive with the Reds moving forward. But I don't think it was that crazy to be a little bled today with another name potentially added to that IL list. Still no word. I've been looking for updates on that. Still haven't gotten
Nothing
updates
yet.
as far as what that is. I know they said it would be in the morning sometime. I know we're approaching noon, so either way. But if you're listening in Dayton on the radio side when this is re-airing later this afternoon, the news has probably come out by now, so you're probably like, what the hell? We've already known what's wrong. Either way, there you go. Just a disclaimer. This is recorded earlier in the day. Elliot, your thoughts? Obviously, you being a Bearcat fan, it's not like you're a big Xavier fan by any means, but I've always said this, like, people get mad, like, so in Dayton with Bengals fans, they're like, well, why do you care? Why do you talk so much about the Ravens? Why do you talk so much about the Steelers? I'm like, because when you have hated rivals of the teams that you follow, anything that they do is news to you. Anything that they do is impacts you as a program, talking college here or in the NFL or whatever. You know, people, from a Bengals perspective, you may hate the Browns, but if they do something that impacts you, it's a Bengals topic, in my opinion, at least how I've approached doing my shows over the years. But obviously you're not a Xavier guy, Elliot, but when they do something, whether it be good or bad, it impacts you, whether it brings a smile to your face or you get pissed if they make a good decision. Did they make a good one here? Were you surprised? Richard Pitino, leaves New Mexico to take the Xavier job after Villanova was the rumored landing spot for him. I think that's a hell of a get for Xavier. I was not expecting him to be that aggressive and go that far outside the box. They just traditionally don't do that. I love the hire for Xavier, but I also feel like it puts a lot more pressure on your side of things of being a Bearcat fan, because if he comes in and kills it and they make the tournament again, they've just coming off of a tournament win. It's not like Xavier's bad or anything, but if he elevates Xavier to where they're being talked about more than any other team in this area right now because of the Pitino name, that adds even more pressure to the struggles of Wes Miller and the Bearcats, right? Like I feel like there is this is being talked about heavily in the athletics department for the Bearcats today, correct?
I think so. And it's how much does a rivalry weigh? Obviously, we talked to Jacob about Michigan, and it weighs a whole hell of a lot. It absolutely is competitive between Xavier and UC with the basketball programs. It's one of my favorite rivalries. And to have Xavier get a coach of Pitino's caliber, it does scare me. I kind of wanted Chris Mack, kind of didn't, because Chris Mack destroyed UC. He was very successful at Xavier, but it was a different time. I think that's important to mention. It was, the world of NIL wasn't here yet, and it was, I don't know how much Chris Mack was in the weeds and recruiting, so it would have been interesting to see him navigate these waters with Xavier, with the new NIL budget and everything that he'd get here instead of Charleston. Saying that, Pitino, it's a what have you done for me lately type of league here, and he's done very, very well over the past 3 seasons. So, 2 tournament appearances back-to-back years. I'm not going to weigh too much of what happened in Minnesota. I think Minnesota, we know that's probably one of the dumpsters of the Big Ten, and there probably wasn't a ton of expectations for him to be great there. So I think when you have a program like New Mexico, maybe not one of the world's best programs, but you have immense success with a program like that, I think he's due to have even more success with Xavier. That scares me because Wes Miller has come here and he's been an abject failure. He has not been good. The program is worse probably today than it was with Wes, which is tough. I think that I hope the recruits are worth something someday. The Bearcats are getting more recruits than ever, the highest level recruits. You're getting a 5-star. The program's never had a 5-star. So maybe that works. It just didn't work this year. So how am I supposed to say it's going to work next year or the year after that? It's year 5 of Wes Miller next season, and we're no closer to the tournament than the day we started. I think it's immensely frustrating. And if Pitino comes into Xavier next year and he wins the crosstown shootout and he leads that organization, that program, to an NCAA tournament while UC sits on their hands with the guy that we've got, it's a joke. It's a laughing stock. We play on April Fool's Day at the Crown. That's the whole year next year if they don't make the tournament and Xavier does. It's a complete laughing stock. The Xavier program, despite what some of my good friends on the UC side think, has been 1 million times better in my lifetime. Not 1,000 times, not 100 times, not 1 billion times, maybe a quadrillion times better than UC has been since I've started watching UC basketball. So if they're able to make that work with him, The Wes Miller's panic button, that switch, has got to be nearing to be flipped. You can't do it this year because it costs $10 million. But when it costs $5 million, when it cuts in half, that's when we have to do it if they're not going to make the tournament.
I guess that would be the biggest question is you'd like to think UC's obviously sitting in their offices right now, John Cunningham, thinking, how do we respond to something like this? But what can they do? Yeah. They have one of the best recruiting classes they've ever had coming in next year. Wes Miller's buyout is, you can't even talk about it. It's $10 million. There's no way that's on the table. So you can't get a new coach. You can't go recruit better players. What do? Do you kick players off the roster and force them into the portal and try to bring in new players to completely overhaul this culture? I think that's the biggest question I have for UC, because that was the first thing I thought as well. I think Rich Pitino is a phenomenal hire at Xavier. I think it's really one of the better things that they could do, going back to that same cycle that they've lived in for the last decade or so. I'm very glad that they broke it. I think my biggest question for Xavier fans is what do you think's going on here, though? Do you think Rich Pitino's coming to coach you for the next decade? Because I certainly don't. So I don't know how their mindset's going to be in 4 or 5 years or whatever it is when he's going up to St. John's to coach in Madison Square Garden as a succession plan to Dad. So I think that's a big thing for that as well. But I don't know what UC can do as a response to this. I think that would be the next question: is you'd like them to respond, but what's even on the table? You can't go get a 5-star. You already have one. You can't fire your coach. The buyout's too high. So you just running it back, and it's still just praying Sean Abayev?
That's it. That's all you can do. It's literally all you can do, and it's a tough place to be. But I think that question was answered. We were talking about that in the chat, I think, for a second before it got onto the nonsense Reds debate. Every program outside of 5, I'm talking 5. They're all stepping stones. They're all jobs that you want to get to a different place. Wes Miller, when he came to Cincinnati, he absolutely thought about trying to get back to North Carolina or a job like that. You know what I mean? So I don't think anybody is unrealistically expecting long-term hires until the day they die. They're going to be here. That's just not how college sports works. I know it's kind of a tough question to ask, Paul, but that's why I kind of said it. It's just college sports. Every fan has a right to be upset when a coach leaves, especially the way Sean Miller did. But I also think you can have it in the back of your mind that none of these guys are out for the fans. They are out for themselves, and that's been the case for a very long time. This isn't a new development. So if Pitino is successful there, he's going to leave. If Wes Miller figures it out in the next 3 years, he's going to leave. So it's just the era of college sports.
Yeah, the theory I have with Richard Pitino to Xavier is, one of the articles I read too was highlighting the fact that, Rick Pitino, and I think, we talked about it a little bit ago with Frischner about, you don't know how much longer Rick Pitino is going to be coaching at St. John's. And one of the ideas that's out there with the success that they've had right away with Pitino is the fact that, rumblings of Richard Pitino needed to get to the Big East to start learning the Big East, coaching in the Big East, coaching against the Big East, recruiting the Big East, and everything. Learn the Big East, because there's a direct correlation, a connection between not Xavier and St. John's, but the Pitino name in St. John's. And when that time does come, especially if Xavier is having a lot of success with Richard Pitino, if St. John's and Rick Pitino ultimately part ways due to him retiring due to his age, that could be the connection there. But I tell you what, I've talked with multiple athletic directors. One athletic director, Bob Grant, used to be the athletic director at Wright State, and he told me that when he first started, he'd get so pissed when coaches would leave and take other jobs. It would drive him nuts. But then he goes, then I had a bad coach for a bit that nobody was trying to take away, that nobody was wanting. And then he goes, we went through a stretch where we had really good players and other bigger schools were trying to take them away, and that would piss him off. And then he goes, then we had a bad team, and well, I noticed my job was pretty stress-free because nobody was trying to poach our players and nobody wanted our coach. And then he realized, oh, yeah, that's a bad thing. So he learned from a young age as an AD that, you know what? If bigger teams want our coaches, that means we did our job. If bigger teams want our players, that means our coaches are doing their job. It's actually flattering. If other programs are looking at your coach and want to pay them to come lead their program, that means you did a good job as an athletic director in your hiring process. So I thought that was a cool takeaway from an AD that I've known for a long time and talked with him a while back about this. Wright State had a guy named Brad Burnell who is for the last 16, 17 years been at Clemson, and Clemson was a no-name basketball program, and they've had all their success through him. It's not like it's, national championships or whatever, but Brad Burnell was a big get for Clemson from Wright State. It was a big loss for them, and that was the one that pissed him off. And then he said he learned from there on out, it's a good thing when coaches come in and other schools want them, that means that you made the right hire. The fact that nobody wants Wes Miller, the fact that nobody is knocking on the door of Cincinnati to take him away, I think that tells you what you need to know at this point as far as that's concerned. So paying attention to what happens at Xavier, I think that truly matters. I think that when they may not be in the same conference, but you're also fighting to be the face of the city that you play in. Obviously, Cincinnati plays in Cincinnati. You have the name in there. But Xavier, with this hire, puts them on the front burner as far as being the team that everyone wants to watch, wants to talk about. And we'll see if Richard Pitino can do and have the same magic with Xavier that his dad is having with St. John's. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But yeah, I could see, in a few years, if he ultimately leaves for that St. John's job to take his dad's spot, I don't think that's a bad thing. I thought Xavier fans were a little sensitive with Sean Miller leaving. I just never thought that he was there to stay. I don't think any coach is going to Xavier to stay. Here's a win for Xavier, though. I will say this. Villanova's won a national championship. Won national championships. Like, you could go there and win a national championship. It's been proven. One of the big things that I read today that Sean Miller left Xavier's because he wanted to go somewhere where he felt he could win a national championship consistently. He could win at Xavier. You could make the tournament a lot at Xavier, but he didn't feel he could win a national championship there. Texas gave him that warm, fuzzy feeling inside that Xavier didn't. I think it's a win that you have Villanova, who's won a national championship before, recently too, by the way, and Richard Pitino chose Xavier, who's never been to the Final Four, over them. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's
there are reports that he didn't have an official offer from Villanova either, so I think everyone jumping to say that he picked from the two. I think Villanova is still going after Willard, the Maryland coach. I don't think they're going to settle for less than Maryland or Cronin. I think those are the two names. I think both are better coaches, at least tournament success and relative recent success, than Pitino is. So I wouldn't go so far until we get some concrete evidence of an offer there to say that he picked Xavier over Villanova. This feels a lot like Dion picking Colorado over UC. It's just it doesn't feel like it happened to me. So obviously it could be the case. Maybe he did. Maybe he wants to be at Xavier so bad, and that's great. Good for them. But either way, however that shook out, it's a great hire, and it's one of the better hires that they could make in terms of getting out of that loop that they were stuck in for so long and getting an exciting name who's going to get as many butts in seats as any hire you're possibly going to make. Something that our dear friend Reed Mouse texted me earlier today is when he was bringing up how excited he was about this hire, is he said that the networks have a draft for these conference games early in the offseason to determine where they get played. And that first game off the block, Xavier St. John's is going to be close. Yeah, to that 1-1 pick. So Xavier's going to be able to jolt themselves. Paul even said it. He was posted on the official ESPN account as Sean Miller moved to Texas. This hire is going to jolt Xavier more into a national spotlight over the next few years as they follow Pitino storylines and everything like that. And that's going to be great. And I think this next hire after Pitino is going to be one of the most crucial hires, it may be in Xavier history, because I think Pitino is going to work very, very well. And he's going to be very successful. He's going to be able to recruit. If he can do it with such great talent at New Mexico, he's going to be able to get good talent to Cincinnati and play for Xavier. So I think that's going to work out very well, and he'll be on to bigger and better things. And always the question with programs, in that point when we get there, is how do you replace it? How do you keep that thing rolling? And I think that's kind of where Xavier's going to be for a long time, as you try to hit on multiple hires in a row to establish yourself as a dominant college basketball program. We do have some other college basketball breaking news that is very exciting. Okay. Very exciting. The crown is expanding. It is not the crown, but it is expansion, and it is not the NCAA tournament. Oh. Maui might be dead. That is the only negative of this news. The Maui Invitational might be dead, but the Players Era Invitational, the NIL Invitational that gives money to all the schools that participated, 8 schools in it this year, Alabama was one of them that participated. They will be expanding to 32 schools in 2026. Wow. November Madness will be taking place. It is expected that a group stage will take place in multiple cities in the first round as we advance, and there will be eliminations, and the winner will get NIL to the players that debuted with those teams.
So not a bracket format. It'll be...
None of this is confirmed. None of it's confirmed. It's just on the table. They are intending to expand. That's the verbiage used to create November Madness is what they're trying to tab it here. 32 teams in the Players Era Invitational. This year they had Alabama, Auburn, Gonzaga, Houston, Kansas, Michigan State, St. John's, and Tennessee. So taking those top teams right off the rip. That's all the 1 seeds, the 2 seeds, and Gonzaga. So, that's really, really great teams. We're going to get great games in this tournament.
I wonder how that works with schedules, though.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but teams like UConn, Dan Hurley, so confident that they weren't going to go to multi-team events anymore. A big move like this, I think, is going to rope a lot of those top teams
And that's not in,
into
that's
this
not
tournament.
in Maui, right?
It is not. It has nothing to do with Maui.
Okay,
I'm
all
just
right.
saying that if we're taking, a lot of the great teams and putting them in this tournament, 32 of the best teams in college
Well, that means
basketball.
UC might get to play Maui.
That's right. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel for Maui, with all due respect.
UC gets to play Maui. Good for them. That
That'd
would
be
cool.
awesome, though.
That would be
November
cool.
Madness would be incredible.
That'd be very cool. Also, real quick, and I wanted to credit Xavier fans for this as well. I don't know if you guys saw this. Sean Miller was unable to use Sean Miller UT or UT Sean Miller because Xavier fans took all the handles that he could possibly have for Texas. So it's now Sean Miller __.
Him and Charlie
is his
Goldsmith.
at. So that is
The double underscore
the
guys.
double underscore guys. I respect that a lot. If Wes Miller gets fired or leaves, I'm absolutely going to do that with his next school if somebody hires him.
I was going to say, if he leaves, it won't be to do what Sean Miller did. It'll, just saying. You said possibly losing Maui. I hope Maui doesn't go away. I mean,
Me too. I just mean the quality of the teams in Maui. So, Maui would be going away.
Oh, no doubt. And the thing is, that would be bad for Dayton. I mean, how else are they going to brag about almost beating really good teams if they don't have Maui?
They're not going to have as many quad one losses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Obi Toppin year. Their biggest win that season was we almost beat Kansas. I mean, I'll never. I remember it like it was yesterday. Well, I'm not hating. That's just the reality of it. This year,
might be a
20-point lead on North Carolina, and we lost to North Carolina, but we were competitive with North Carolina. We were competitive with Iowa State. I'm just saying, but it is what it is. What? Go Flyers.
We is crazy in there.
The we.
The we is crazy.
Well,
no one hates
Yeah.
Dayton basketball more than old Justin Kidder.
It is what it is. But there you go. All right, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us today. Opening day tomorrow. You never know. You never know with this show. But we'll do it again tomorrow. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Go Flyers. Man, Jacob, I bet you feel stupid for going to school like Alabama. I bet you screwed up because last I checked, Alabama is not, no matter how big they are, no matter the fact they're playing the SEC, the one thing Alabama is not, they are not Miami of Ohio. They strive to be Miami of Ohio. They want to be Miami of Ohio. You want them to be Miami of Ohio because Miami of Ohio is officially the official college of the Cincinnati Bengals. I've never heard of this before. I've never heard of anything. Maybe this is whatever they pay is how they get Trey Hendrickson's deal done. I have no idea, but this is the most unique thing I've heard. The official university of the Cincinnati Bengals, Miami of Ohio.
And we all know what that means, so we won't have to explain it at all because we all already know what the official university of the Bengals means.
That's right. That's
right. That's great. I'm glad. Hopefully, in the contract, it didn't require us to use all 6 draft picks on Miami, Ohio players. I think there's 1 or 2 that I think are draftable, but certainly not in the first few rounds. I would have liked to sign an official university, maybe Alabama would be kind of cool. You just get to draft them all.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah.
You're entitled to it? Who knows?
Yeah, you just automatically get them. This year, the Browns signed a deal with Miami, Florida as their official university, and they just automatically get Cam Moore without trading up.
Money's great because the people that say money can't buy happiness, they can buy whatever you want. You want to be the university
If you don't think money can buy happiness, you're buying the wrong stuff.
Yeah, you're buying
you are spending the money in wrong places.
Yeah, people always say money can't buy happiness. They've never grown up poor like me. I'm telling you right now, you absolutely you can. By the way, we love Miami of Ohio. Have no problem with Miami of Ohio. We just thought that was unique. Like I've never seen.
Oh yeah.
There are probably examples of it out there. I've just never seen like a.
They were the Red Zone sponsor last year in stadium. Yeah. It was the Miami, Ohio Red Zone. Whenever the Bengals would get inside the 20-yard line. So just taking the steps up. I think they were on some graphics from their social media as well. So, I love it. Good for them.
They wanted Joe Burrow to prove himself. They're like, we want to be the official university of the Bengals, but I don't know about that Joe Burrow guy. You need to show me something. And I think his biggest accomplishment was impressing Miami of Ohio enough to jump on as the official university sponsor.
I think really the biggest opportunity out there for someone else to hop on this Bengals sponsorship wave would be the reverse of the Miami, Ohio red zone when the opposing offense gets in the red zone, because that's going to happen a lot.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to happen a whole heck of a lot in 2025. So maybe if you want to get a bang for your buck, go with the defensive red zone. And
God, that would be so
maybe
funny.
we can keep them out.
That would be so funny. As for tomorrow, not to change the subject, but tomorrow, the schedule is tentative as to what's going on with the show. So hang with us for that. We don't know if we plan on streaming the game. And then obviously
Chatterbox Reds will take over afterwards.
I don't know when Off the Bench will be or if there will be an Off the Bench. There will be some sort of show before the Reds. I just don't know what time or when that'll be. So stay with us for that.
Almost certainly not 10 o'clock.
Certainly not.
I would say tentative schedule tomorrow. Just we'll post something. We'll get it out. We'll let you guys know whenever we have it all ironed out. But there will be some changes tomorrow. But we'll have content rolling out all day for opening day.
How many opening days have you guys been to?
I've been to the last 8. So I don't know in my lifetime. I could try to count, but I haven't missed one in a long time. This will be the first one I've missed in a long time.
I've been to 2, maybe 3 or 2. It's and only once really, I think, in my adult life. I don't go to opening day a lot. It's never been a tradition for me. As I've mentioned it before, I'm not a big crowd guy. Stresses me out, breaks my brain a little bit. So I try to watch every single year at a bar. Usually, sometimes my dad and I go. Sometimes we just watch at home. But this year, I think we'll be watching here. So it doesn't bother me too much that I'm not there. It's just one of those cool experiences for everybody else. I know a lot of my buddies don't miss opening days, and they go down for the parade every year. It's a cool thing. Our good friends Champions, they'll have a float in the parade if you're interested in seeing that. So it'll be a good time for everybody involved. It's just I've never been a big opening day. Go to it and experience it. I also I don't drink and I don't like crowds. It's like the last place on earth for me personally that would get me to go down there. So again, everybody else have a good time. It's just for me, it's not my thing.
My streak does include the Reds at Braves in 2022. That's one of my biggest feathers in my cap. Just a 3-hour drive from Tuscaloosa.
How about that?
So me and a couple of my buddies went to that one. Yeah, opening day is absolutely one of my favorites. favorite events of the entire year. I dragged my roommates up my senior year of college to come, enjoy it with me. I think it's one of the better things we do in Cincinnati in terms of everyone in the city, no matter where you are, whether you're downtown, whether you're, at Champions, at a bar, the west side, east side, wherever you are, every TV is going to be on the Reds, and everyone's going to be, enthralled in that game and very excited to watch it happen. And I think it's, one of the cooler things, because even, college basketball is huge in this city, Xavier and UC, but when you go to the bar, it's all going to be split up on different games. You have people that left the city and went elsewhere. NFL Sunday, Bengals, obviously a huge deal in this city, but the NFL is a monster in and of itself. They're going to split that up and have, all the games on everywhere else. Wherever you go in the city of Cincinnati tomorrow, it'll be the Reds. And I think everyone basically will be wearing Reds gear, and then there's just a vibe in the city that I don't know that I've really felt anywhere else for any other sporting event. And granted, I haven't been to opening days at a bunch of other cities because I'd rather be here, and I think that's, one of the coolest things we have going for us. When, national media is posting every single year the pictures of the crowds, the pictures of the bars, and how awesome it is. I think if you ask basically a common fan of baseball around this country, where's the best opening day, Cincinnati's going to be quick on that list, which is such a cool thing. And for everyone that's going to go down and experience it, have a blast. It's one of the better days of the entire summer.
Yeah, the last 2 years, I've gone down with so we've done like our show like in the morning from like 8 to 10 and then already there. So I'm like, well, I'm already here. So I'm just setting up shop for the day, which is nice because as soon as the show's done, I go down over to the Holy Grail and I get one of those little spots outside, and then we're set up for the day. It's awesome until about 2:30, and then that crowd that Elliot's talking about, where there's a large crowd early, but the crowd then becomes you can't move. And there's nothing worse than when you've been drinking since about 10, 11 a.m., and all of a sudden you have to use the restroom and you can't move. And those lines are not moving at all. That is the absolute worst. And then when you're the guy that has the tickets on the phone because you're a dummy and you put it in your wallet on your phone and you can't move tickets out of your wallet to other people's stuff, then everyone's relying on you. And then the big crowd, everyone gets lost and separate. Oh, yeah, it's a big, high-pressure ordeal moments, leading into the ballpark. It's absolutely horrendous, but it's also awesome, and I'm looking forward to it tomorrow. So there's that. But either way, not Elliot though. He hates the Reds. He hates the Reds. Elliot and Reed are going to go out in their Cubs gear and just hang out and celebrate opening day. I guess I don't.
Kirby was in the office yesterday trying to tell us how important it was that the Cubs started 0-2. And it sets the Reds up for immediate success. It was like, man, there's 162 games. I'm not looking at the standings for 100 more games.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that we have someone in our corner that's that dialed in.
I go to 30 games in the year and watch every game because I hate them. Classic Elliot.
Here's opening. This is even positivity that Elliot can't break, right? No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what, the Reds will not be in last place because they could lose tomorrow, and the Cubs are still in last place. They could lose tomorrow, and that's the best part about this is no matter what happens, the Reds will not be in last place to start the season, no matter what happens tomorrow. And that's my spin of positivity. So there you go.
Is tomorrow, obviously, you can get late in the season and a single game can, put you in the playoffs or out of it. And I understand that. Is tomorrow, without hypothetical situations, the most important single game of the entire year?
Yep.
Winning opening day just gets the vibe so high for like the next week. And we talked about it last year when Noel Marte came up. Noel Marte came up, he had 2 hits in his first game. He stunk the rest of the time he was up. But no one remembered for a month because that first game was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
If the Reds go out and play a great game, a memorable game on opening day, that buys them almost a full month of us, getting off their back. I mean, think about how often we talked about the CES walk-off in the last game of the first series last year. We were clearing to May, talking about how great that memory was. So the game tomorrow is, in my opinion, the biggest single game of the entire year, obviously pending hypothetical situations. But that is getting a win and getting the vibes high right out the gate is as big as it comes.
All right, off the bench, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We're done with the radio side of things. But anything else as we wrap up? Again, we don't really know what's going on tomorrow as far as the show in the morning. But hopefully Friday we're all talking about a Reds win. Hopefully Friday we're talking about an exciting Reds opening day. So there you go.
We'll see.
There's that energy. All right, we're done here. That wraps it up for us until Friday at least. This has been Off the Bench presented by UDF.